Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. It's week 32. Let's get going. Before we get on to week 32, let me ask you folks a favor. If you don't mind, can you hit that subscribe button, that little thumbs up? We're really trying to push to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and your help can go a long way. So week 32, the weather was weird, right? Like we got a lot of rain. Most of the days were, in the 90s, feels like temperatures right around that 104, 105. The last couple days of the week, however, the feels like temperature got over 120. The good thing was it was overcast, so we didn't lose a lot of water or anything, and our plants are recovering relatively well. What I wanted to go over today real fast, though, is kind of the decisions that we're making going into, finishing up week 32, and heading into week 33. The decisions that we're trying to make on how we're planting our gardens and the vegetables that we're adding and the ones that we're omitting. So this will make a little bit more sense when we get going. So let's take a look here in the old garden to start. Beansy, the garden cat. So let's just touch on this real fast. We have the last round of our summer vegetables going here. We have all of these green beans, and as you can see, these green beans, not only are we starting to pick green beans, but there are a lot of blooms on them, so we're getting really excited. The okra down here is starting to come into its own, so we anticipate by the end of this week going into next week, we'll start harvesting the okra to pickle. And then down here on the bottom rows, this is where we tried the new experiment with the cucumbers, and they are coming along really nicely so far. They're growing in really well. Now, the one thing, I'm not sure how the pole beans down there are going to end up doing. They all came up and they're looking good, but the grasshoppers got a hold of a lot of them. We've had to replant them a couple times. So I'm not sure if pole beans are going to be a late addition or not to our summer. All right, so before we leave the old garden, I just want to point a few things out. In this middle bed here, that's where our fall potatoes are going to go this year. We've never grown fall potatoes before. We're going to try it. We want to get those in around the middle of September, and we're going to try to pull them out right there around the 1st of November, maybe the middle of November, depending on how late we can get our freeze, right? We'll leave them in the ground as long as we possibly can, I guess is what I'm getting to. The rest of this garden, more than likely, we'll let rest for the rest of the year. The cherry tomatoes, they'll go all the way up until the first freeze. The okra and that sort of stuff will last most of the rest of the summer. And the bottom row down there with all the pollinators and the cucumbers and the pole beans, what we're hoping is those also make it through like the end of October-ish or so. Another reason why we avoid growing some of our fall crops in the old garden is simply because of the orientation that has to the sun. This garden doesn't get a whole lot of direct sun in the early spring or the late fall. So the idea is that we put the things in here we don't want to get too sun scorched. And then that way we can grow those throughout the middle of the summer. And if we have a really bad summer like we did 2 years ago with droughts and such, at least we have sort of a garden area that is a respite from that sort of temperatures. Okay, enough with the old garden. Let's go to the new garden. So I just want to run through this real fast once again. Green beans, these guys should be out of here around the same time as the green beans in the other beds. The idea is this is where our fall carrots will go. This bed did really good with the spring carrots. I think it'll do even better with the fall, simply because the compost was new at the beginning of the year and has had time to kind of cool off. So what I'm hoping is we don't have the dead spots this year, or I'm sorry, in the fall like we did in the spring. I don't want to spend a whole lot on that because week 32, that's essentially what we did. We went through and we had to make a lot of these decisions about what we're going to have going forward for the rest of this summer and then what we want to start harvesting for our fall crops. This is a great example, right? Like right now we have these 2 yellow squash that are coming up. We're hoping to be able to eat yellow squash until, say mid-September. Next to them, we put turnips. And what we want to do with these is this will be our early batch of turnip greens. Once the squash come out, then we will do the other half, more than likely also in turnips, and those will be, you know, say the mid-fall turnips. So you can kind of see a theme here. We're starting to fill in patches that we have. This is another example here where the wind came through and ripped out all of our kale. I went ahead and put in some butter crunch lettuce, and as you can see, it is starting to come up despite the heat. My idea here was, if you step back and you look at it, you can see how I've got like the peppers and the eggplant on this side, and then we've got the cayennes on here. So what I think is it'll get enough sunlight for the lettuce to grow, but the peppers on either side of it will keep the direct sun off. So even though, you know, it gets to, you know, 100 degrees still this time of year, with the way the sun orients to this bed, the peppers are going to help keep the vast majority of the hot direct sun off of it, I should say. You know, because whenever the sun is over here in the west coming down in the afternoons, it is super hot. The morning sun doesn't seem to have the same adverse effect as the other sun does. And the last thing I wanted to touch on in here is these are our zucchini plants. You can see they're coming along pretty good. And the grasshoppers, though, the last few days, I guess, I don't know if it's the temperature or if it's just that time of year, but they got in here and kind of got aggressive on my zucchini plants, so we had to give them the business. And then just to touch on them, since we've showed them before, you can see the different stages of the purple hull peas. These up here should be coming off by the end of the month or so. We'll start getting the purple hulls, and then about the first week of September or so, we'll get purple hulls off of this guy. Once those are done, we are going to replace those, and we will grow a lot of our fall vegetables in these two beds right here. Probably more than likely, we're going to try to get some beets and turnips in those. During the fall beds, man, we love leafy greens, especially after the summer, putting them with our tomatoes and all that kind of stuff that are left for the rest of the summer garden. They pair up really, really well. Let's touch on the pallet garden since we're over here real fast. You can see these purple hulls, they have started to bloom as well. So these guys will be on the same, I believe we planted these as the same time as the top row in the top garden. So these peas and those peas should be coming out at the same time. I'm going to try to dry them this year. I've gotten into canning a lot and I'm really enjoying it, but I think I want to try drying the beans this year to see how they do over the winter. And then next year, depending on how that goes, I'll either dry them or we'll try canning. The cantaloupe are done. We got about 2 dozen cantaloupe and they were all delicious. But the vines and stuff started growing back, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of getting the itch to put in some beets. So we're going to also put in some beets in this bed, and then our Romas were done. Hats off to our Roma tomatoes, man. We got 55 jars of tomatoes out of this Roma bed, and that's not including what we put in our salsa as well. So I'm incredibly excited for how many jars we were able to put up just out of this one little bed. So to me, that's absolutely amazing. It goes a long way in our food security plan, which is something we're going to talk a lot more about heading into the fall and the winter of this year. So again, we'll probably start doing our lettuces in here. I'd like to get some butter crunch, some black seeded Simpson. I might even get some red lettuce this year to go in this bed. Just something to carry us through to that first frost, you know, that way before we start eating all the canned goods we put up, we can make those last as long as possible. Look at the size of that tomato. So before I let you folks go, let's talk about last week. We only did the one video last week because we decided it was about time for us to take a little break there in the middle of the summer. The weather was just super uncomfortable outside, and just like any other walk of life, man, you do something for a certain amount of time, you're going to get burned out. You need a little bit of a break. So I took some time, took a deep breath, and we are ready to go for the rest of the year. Also, please keep an eye on the channel. Leslie and I have started doing some shorts. They're a whole lot of fun. Something we can just carry our phone around in the garden. When we see something fun, we can share it with you all. So, you know, and if you like that kind of thing, or you know somebody who does, again, just do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate it. As always, thanks for hanging out with me today. Until next time, I hope you all take care of yourselves. Peace.